All right, Nick, let's talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide coming fresh off a bye into a week. I would call it a pretty good rivalry game. Alabama LSU, one that we all know throughout time has been a big one, but Alabama has got some really great news coming into this game at LSU. I think it's really great news for the Crimson Tide. I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Alabama going to LSU. Big game. All Alabama Crimson Tide fans know LSU, Alabama, one of those games that is, potentially going to be a historic one every time they step on the field. But going to Death Valley, Alabama has got some really excellent news. Let's get into the article when we talk more about it on the other side. This, of course, from over on 3. It says, Number 11 Alabama travels to take on number 14 LSU in Death Valley this week. Both teams come off a bye and enter November with 2 losses each. Whichever team loses will effectively be eliminated from contention in the expanded 12-team college football playoff, while the winner will remain alive, obviously, in the ever-shrinking race for a berth. According to FanDuel, Alabama is a 2.5-point favorite on the road, mind you, over LSU on Saturday, despite being on the road. I think this is huge news for the Crimson Tide. I think people are seeing what this team did against Missouri, and they are waking up. I think this Alabama Crimson Tide team, everyone is noticing them now. Nick, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, but before we get to you, Crimson Tide fans, in the comment section below, we're talking about this big game versus LSU. We saw what you did versus Missouri, coming fresh off a bye. What do you think the final score to this game is going to be? Will there be another shutout? Is it going to be a barn burner? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think this means for the Crimson Tide?
Well, I think it's outstanding news, and it's important to understand, and we talk about it all the time on this channel, how much the college game, especially big time college football like the SEC obviously is mirroring the NFL game. And that's not just with the performance on the field, not just with the strategies, but also when it comes to the odds makers, the smart money, right? We're talking millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. All the smartest handicappers, all the people that know football, those are the peoples that put in the time and effort to come up with these lines. They are right much more than any talking head on ESPN or anything like that. They know what they're talking about. They've got the resources of massive sports books behind them. So when you look at an odds matchup between two teams, if you compare a National Football League to a college, again, we're going to assume similar dynamic because we're pretty much the same depending on how these teams structure, is that the home team usually gets a 3-point advantage in the odds makers. Now, sometimes if it's a bad home team, like they don't have a good home field advantage, it's as low as 2. If it's a good home team, it can be as high as 4. So usually if a home team, let's say, is favored by 3 points, that usually means the odd makers say the coaches, players are about the same level of talent, same level of skill. They give the home team the edge. What's interesting is that the LSU Tigers night game at home, that is the best, supposedly, home field advantage you're ever going to see in big time college football. And despite all of that, right, that should be a 4-point edge for LSU. They are 2.5-point underdogs. That means that the smart money, the people that know ball more than anybody else, believe that this Alabama Crimson Tide and their coaching staff, for all their foibles, for all the issues they've had this season, are 6.5 points better. That's not insignificant than the LSU Tigers. And this is a Tigers team chock with talent. Nussmeier has had a really nice season. They've got some playmakers on defense. They've been inconsistent at times, but they've got some NFL guys. There's no doubt about that. And of course, at wide receiver, they are stacked like they always are in Baton Rouge. And despite all of that, veteran coach, obviously, Coach Kelly, despite all of that, Alabama's 6.5 points better on paper, right? All the issues Alabama has had. Defensively, they've had some problems. Wide receiver, outside of Williams, they can be a little inconsistent. Running game at times can be a little inconsistent. Jalen Milroe at times can be a little inconsistent. Kalen DeBoer at times can be a little inconsistent. Defensive coaching has had some issues. Despite all of that, Alabama coaching staff, player overall 6.5 points better than the LSU Tigers based on these odds. That is a great sign going to this game. And again, it's not early in the year, right? We've had a lot of football to see where this Crimson Tide program is, and the smart money is clearly saying they're better than LSU.
Yeah, Nick, and I think that's really just how it's going to break out here. I think Alabama, they've been building up all season. They've been growing, they've been learning, killing the boards, been refining what they want to do on the field. And I think that that is just the key here. Alabama is getting better and better. And finally, I do think they're better than LSU. And I think the key here is if we look at what the Tigers are doing, the Tigers go on the road, or their last game was at Texas A&M. They come into Texas A&M, they lose that game. But how did they lose that game? It's because Texas A&M really shut down their rushing attack. Their leading rusher that game was Williams with 23 rushing yards. Really, not a whole lot going on there. And what did they do? Nussmeier had to throw the ball all over the field. This was a guy who threw for over 400 yards against Texas A&M because they couldn't get anything doing in the running game. Alabama, on the other hand, they had a great passing defense versus Missouri. So I think Alabama, if they can combine somewhere, in between here, shut down the pass of Nussmeier some, frustrate those LSU receivers, which are really good. I give them that. But if they're able to limit them there, and they can capitalize off of, what Texas A&M was able to show, the blueprint, shut down the run game for LSU, you can win that game. I think there's a recipe for success here for Alabama because I think the offense is clicking. They've been doing really good things on the offensive side of the ball, especially the last 3 weeks. I think the defense is going to be the key here. We saw the defense was the key versus Missouri. Things really started clicking there. Bye week, can you continue on that success? I think they can, and I think that's what the odds makers are seeing.